Hello, I'm going to be talking to you today about what your hi-fi system should sound like, in quotes. There are no real hard and fast rules, but I just really wanted to lend some experience and some tips, really, just to avoid people making what could be a rather costly mistake with their hi-fi system. Okay, all the time, the great big proviso is use your own ears. You will like a different kind of sound to me. Okay, I'm going to bust a myth, and I'm also going to look at tonal quality. Okay, so first of all, this myth, which I'm not exactly going to bust, but I'm going to reinterpret. First of all, this live sound thing. Bigger than perfecting sound or perfect sound forever, which was the CD slogan at the time, which proved not to be true, is this thing about it should sound like the concert hall. Okay, at the time that hi-fi became probably more of a passion than it is now, there was an expectation that people listened to music in concert halls, primarily classical music. Rock and roll, Elvis Presley, etc., and so forth, was considered rather a poor relation of music, in much the same way that perhaps photography became or was considered at the time as a poorer relation to art. And nowadays, people have different perceptions. It's always been a moot point, really, even if we just look basically at a concert hall. Okay, right, you're going to a concert to hear a singer. Okay, if you're going to reproduce that concert as a recording, where are you going to reproduce it from? Is it going to be from, somebody sitting at the back of the hall? Is it going to be someone that's right at the front? Is it going to be the conductor's viewpoint? And also, is it actually, is it actually pleasant to come home into your living room and actually have the acoustics of the Albert Hall suddenly transplanted into your living room? And there's a lot of debate over really whether that's true, or whether you want something that is going to be far more living room friendly. So you cannot just say, oh, it sounds just like the live experience. Also, a lot of people, especially these days, don't know what a live experience should sound like. And I would always advise that however low rate the experience is, whether it's a pub or a school hall or something like that, that people should actually get out and hear what music sounds like. So, given that you cannot trust this, what live music should sound like, there should still be in your system, it should still sound realistic. It should have presence. It should be there. I'm going to talk about, things being in your face, which is different. It's a balance, really, between whether or not it sounds completely in your face and you just want to get rid of it, to something that's there and that is almost alive in your room. Okay, there's no point in buying a hi-fi if it's just going to sit in a corner bleating away to itself. Really, I mean, I find myself that records actually have far more of an organic sort of presence to them than CDs do. But having said that, my room, now that I've got my hi-fi in, I've changed it, as some people may know. I've moved fairly recently. My room was quite present in the last house, had very little in the way of soft furnishings, had a sort of pseudo wooden floor sort of thing. It wasn't really wood, it was one of those coverings that you get. Blinds at the window, no curtains, and really very little else in the way of soft furnishings, whereas this room has a carpet, it's curtains and and actually that has really transformed the sound. I actually prefer it. A dead acoustic, a completely dead acoustic, sounds like listening to music in a lab, which you don't really want to. But on the other hand, a completely reverberant acoustic will mask some details that are actually on the recording. In much the same way as if you go into a cave and speak, all the reverberation in there, while it's fun to listen to, if you're trying to actually make sense of what someone's saying inside a cave, you have to listen harder. So it's a balance again, okay? Try and get some soft furnishings in your room. Try not to have it absolutely symmetrical, because reverberations want to sort of, you want to break up standing waves and all that sort of thing that are going to, muddle the sound. So, realism then. When one hits a drum, you want to feel the fact that someone's actually hit the drum. Okay, you should be able to imagine that there is a drum skin in front of you that has been hit by a stick. Okay, where again the recording actually demands it. Okay, so for instance, if you're listening to Come Together by the Beatles, where there is actually quite a heavy percussive element to it, that's what you should be able to hear. That throbbing bass drum beat. If someone plucks a bass guitar and bends the string, you want to be able to hear that they've plucked the bass guitar and bent the string. Strumming a guitar, okay? Listen to A Hard Day's Night, at least the stereo version of A Hard Day's Night. You should be able to imagine John Lennon standing in front of a microphone with his Rickenbacker guitar and actually sort of having some sort of image of him doing it. So, where we're talking about tonal quality, anything that shrieks out at you really ought to be avoided. And this is where I'm going to tell a cautionary tale. There was, when I bought my R3 speakers, the dealer that I bought from, who's sadly not dealing anymore, but the dealer that I bought it from in Sevenoaks was quite keen to sell me a pair of Focal JM Lab speakers. Focal have changed their distribution in England and changed their range since I went and looked at this speaker a few years ago. But he was quite intent on selling me these things, and they were, I think, a tiny bit more expensive than the R3s that I came away with, but they're in the same sort of price bracket. And I went in there, I'd made an appointment with the chap, it was a Saturday morning, I had a few CDs with me, and, beg your pardon, and what I came across, he was chatting to another customer at the time, and I introduced myself, said who I was, and he sat me down in front of these Focal speakers. It wasn't exactly the rest of my system playing. It was, at the time I had a Riga Planet, the old one. He had the second incarnation of the Planet, plus a Riga Brio amp on the source side of it. Put this CD on. It was Damien Rice singing Eskimo, which has an absolutely massive dynamic range to it, and starts off as a whisper. But he was really trying to impress me. So he put this CD on, started out with Damien Rice singing really quietly, twanging away on a guitar, and it was so quiet that he turned it up. And he turned it up to, I suppose the sort of level where, you didn't have to strain to hear it, and a bit louder. And so there we are listening. He goes back to chatting to his other customer, who's probably spending a lot more money than me, and therefore probably a bit more of a priority. And this thing starts, and then in the second verse we got this this bass line which suddenly joined it, and it was like a foghorn hitting you, one of those old ships that had the great big boo sound through a funnel. It was either that or another analogy which I thought probably more appropriate at the time was being run over by an underground train, that sort of thing that suddenly hit you. And he let that go on. the the racks of hi-fi were verging on rattling at the time, and then it got even louder, and then suddenly it burst into this huge opera that the song actually goes into. And he suddenly turned to me and said, "Do you want to turn that down?" As if it was my fault that I turned it up. Well, I persevered with that speaker for a little while, but that experience just stayed with me, and it really wasn't a very pleasant experience at all. And where anything shrieks out at you, I could have put up with those speakers at the volume that he had it, were it not for the bass. It really showed up the fact that the bass was just going to overpower anything that I sort of wanted to listen to. He did eventually give me his full attention. We put Stevie Wonder on there singing Pastime Paradise, which is one of my all-time favourite songs. And it made very good sense of the three vocal elements that come into the song as it goes on. The choir, the Hare Krishna choir, Stevie Wonder's lead vocal. And yes, it was good, but even at normal volume levels, the bass was in your face, and what's more, the treble was too. It was very crispy, and as anything that draws attention to itself on first level, and this is we're going into tonal quality now here, and particularly tonal extremes, bass and treble, if they draw attention to themselves on your first listen, they are likely to become tiring. When we changed to the Riga speakers, the first thing that I noticed more than anything was that they stepped back. They kind of like disappeared from the sonic viewpoint and just let the music come out, the message of the music. And that's the important thing. It's not whether or not the treble can reach up to 30 kilohertz, which is arguably beyond the point that we can hear. It's whether or not the musical message comes through, which I felt at the time the R3s did far better than the focal ones that he started with. Yes, I had a bad experience, and maybe at the time, you only get an hour or so with these people. You've got to try and sort of imagine yourself listening to these things over a long period of time. When I went to choose my Mirror 3 amp that I'm living with now, I listened to the basic name amp at the same time, which was lovely amp, and in many ways possibly superior. But regardless of whether it was a possibly superior sounding amp, I put my Cooler Shaker album on, one of my Cooler Shaker ones, K, listening to Tatva. The cymbals sounded really zingy and really great, but that was on that record or CD or whatever, and I just thought, well, perhaps that is going to get tiring over a long time. The Mirror 3 did atmosphere in spades, putting the same record on, which starts off with a sort of a smaller sort of vignette of an Indian instrumental, and really it's just like you could imagine with the Rigas that they're all sitting around on their sort of carpets and what have you, burning their incense, and actually being transported to the place that it was happening, rather than getting a more sonically correct sort of interpretation, where yes, you have got quite exciting trebles and deeper lows, but on the whole the Riga provides a more refined and sort of self-effacing experience to listen to. Okay, now I'm not trumpeting Riga products over anybody else's products. I'm just talking about my own experiences there, and it could be the same whether I was talking about, you know, brand Fred blogs or something like that. It's the musical message that has got to come across. You've got to find yourself listening to the performers rather than to characteristics of the system that you're listening to. Okay, my system is not perfect. In the next video that I make about this, you'll find perhaps one or two of my gripes. But, you know, getting that tonal balance and that balance between, you know, realism and in-your-faceness is, I think, probably step one, and the most important thing. Okay, it will depend to an extent on your room, to quite a large extent on your room. So I would advise that if ever you go for a hi-fi demo, that you try and listen to equipment that you've got before you listen to anything that you might be considering buying. This has gone on for rather a long time, this video. I do hope that it's of some use, and the next time I talk to you, I'm going to be talking about stereo. Okay, bye.